अच्छा,
वो रजिस्ट्रेशन होना चाहिए।
ओके, व्हाटएवर। Erase note of it. Yeah, I'm there. Okay, yeah, of course, there are many misconceptions about ISO 9000. So we will today talk about it in detail so that you understand what it is. What is the organization you are in, Subir?
1 minute, sir. 1 minute.
I can't hear you.
Sir, sir, again, your question. Sir, please tell me again your question.
No. What is the organization you are working with?
Sir, I am working with Narayana Rudalaya.
Okay,
Narayana
hospital.
Rudalaya Group.
Okay, yeah, hospital.
Our hospital name is Narayana Bommananda Narayana Hospital, multi-speciality hospital.
Very good, very good. So that, we'll try to see what examples you can give as we go by. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So I will share my screen and we will start. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. ISO 9000 standards.
Correct. So today's topic is on ISO 9000 standards, and we will see what are they. Of course, you are not very clear about it, obviously, because you are not involved in it. But when you are in the industry, or for that matter, in any organization, you should know what this is about. Okay. Now, what is ISO? Basically, ISO is a organization called the International Organization for Standardization. Of course, you may say why it is, if it is International Standard for Organization for Standardization, why is it not IOS? But for some reason they chose, especially I think in the French, it comes the other way around. So they have chosen it to call it ISO. This is based out of Geneva in Switzerland. It's an international organization. It is an independent, non-governmental international organization with a membership of about 167 countries or national standards bodies. Because each country who accepts the ISO 9000 or is a member of the organization will have their own national standards bureau or bodies. Now, I will slightly divulge here to say that ISO 9000 is not what earlier we used to call as ISI. If you remember, we used to call IA as a ISI mark, and now it is called BIS or Bureau of Indian Standards. That is different compared to this. Bureau of Indian Standards is also does certification for products, whereas ISO or ISO 9000, as it is called, a generic family of standards, is not product specific, it is system specific. Though through its members, it brings together experts to share knowledge and develop voluntary, consensus-based, market-relevant industrial standards that support innovation and provide solutions to global challenges. The ISO started in the year 1946.
44.
Yes, in England. And Subir, you can keep it on mute. Whenever you want to talk, you switch on and then again go back to mute. That way, yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah. It started in England. You can say that immediately after the World War II, some countries, 25 countries got together, and then they said that we must have some standards by which we can freely exchange goods across our countries, so that of a certain, maintaining certain standards. So they met at the Institute of Civil Engineers in London and formally inaugurated their organization, which was called the ISO, or International Organization for Standardization. Currently, it has 802 technical committees. It operates through these technical committees. Each of the committees is for a certain domain or expert, or for certain set of standards. They have so far published, you'll see the number of numbers, 24,183 standards have been published so far till date, because these are taken from the website. Now, ISO standards are internationally agreed by experts. Experts in any country, or for that matter, even those who do not follow ISO, agree that they are standards which are need to be emulated, let us say. It could be about making a product, managing a process, delivering a service, or supplying materials. Now, if the standards cover a huge range of activities. Standards are the distilled wisdom of people with expertise in their subject matter and who know the needs of the organizations they represent. People such as manufacturers, sellers, buyers, customers, trade associations, users, or regulators, they are all part of the committees, very different committees. The ISO standards can be, there are many areas in which ISO is makes its standards. The first one was the generic standard, which is the ISO 9001, what we are going to discuss today. Quality management standards to help work more efficiently and reduce product failures. That was what the initial intention of the product. The standard, especially in a world where the goods are flowing freely across nations. So there has to be certain quality level or standards and consistent quality. Environmental management standards to help reduce environmental impacts, because that is a great concern today. Reduce wastages and be more sustainable. Health and safety standards to help reduce accidents in the workplace. In the absence of that, especially during the war, the labor was very much exploited. In fact, that is how the International Labour Organization came into the picture. And, they were not given their due place. So even that is taken into account, health and safety standards. Energy management standards to cut energy consumption, because we are wasting a lot of energy, and especially using fossil fuels. So that needs to be, although we may look for alternate energy, we have to be more energy efficient in our own organizations. Food safety standards when it comes to food being contaminated. IT, information technology security standards to help keep sensitive information secure. This is only a few of them. There are many other standards. As you saw, about 25,000 plus standards are there. All of them are not for certification. We will see that they may be standards for recommending practices. Now, some popular ISO standards, having said that these are all the systems which are there, ISO, that on the top of the list you will see is the ISO 9001-2015 quality management systems, which, as I said, we will see in detail today. ISO stroke IEC, International Electrotechnical Commission, actually, it is 27001 on information security management. ISO 45001-2018 on occupational health and safety management systems. ISO 17025, general requirement for competence of testing and calibration laboratories. In fact, for your hospitals and many organizations, this will be very useful. ISO 14001 environmental management systems. Here again, hospitals produce a lot of wastages, different types of wastages. How do you segregate? How do you dispose of? All that is important. ISO 13485-2016 on medical devices. Again, hospital related, manage quality throughout the life cycle of a medical device. In fact, just the other day, I came across one of the my friends who said that yes, he's from Bombay. His sister was being attended to by a nurse, and she had high sugar. And what do you do at home when you need to measure sugar? You use some strips and some equipment to measure those. Consistently, it was measuring very high, and she being insulin dependent, the nurse was giving increased doses of insulin. And it so happened that she went into almost a diabetic coma, fortunately, and the sugar level dropped to 20 when she was rushed to a hospital. Unfortunately, they could get her out of that coma. And it was later found that it was that device which was used for measurement at home, and the strips probably were old or whatever it is, and it was only giving only one single reading. And the nurse, the nurse could have found, possibly, if she was an experienced nurse, could have found something is wrong, but she couldn't. So you can see that it not only should work in the beginning, but throughout the life cycle of a medical device. That is extremely important in medical practice. Then we have ISO 22000 food safety management systems. This is extremely important because today all of us consume packaged food in one form or the other, and also food which are processed for even basic grains today are processed. So we need to ensure that there are safety. Apart from this, of course, we have adulteration problems. So we need to ensure that our food which we ingest is safe. Then ISO 50001 energy management systems. This I talked to you earlier also. It is extremely important today in the world where energy is always in a short supply, and then the fossil fuels are creating greenhouse gases. Very recently, ISO 21001-2018 for educational organization was brought in. In fact, I also has been a part of a school in which NGO run school, where we wrote our ISO manual and got a certification in the year 2016. Now, sorry, not 2017 or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember. But at that time, there was no standard like this. So we went for ISO 9001, which was 2015. But now that the educational specific standards have come, we are now after 3 years, we need to renew our certificate. We are now going for educational, ISO 21001 for educational organizations. This does not mean that it is only for schools, colleges, and coaching institutes and many other things. It also is applicable to organizations which have their own training centers. Like, for example, Infosys has Asia's largest training center. Many of the IT companies have get graduates and then start giving them training. So there has to be a certain standardization on these processes. So that is why this standard has come in. Now we'll see the ISO 9000 family of standards, which consists of basically ISO 9000-2015 quality management systems. Now, whenever you talk about anything, you must have a certain base or fundamentals about that. And the language which we use or the vocabulary must be clearly defined. Now, ISO 9000-2015, when we say it is the core or the base of all these standards, and it means that this is for fundamentals and vocabulary. Now we'll see what it is. This is how the document of ISO 9000 is like, the copy of the original document. So quality management systems, fundamentals and vocabulary. If you see on the next line, it is written in French because there are many countries, French-speaking countries are also a part of this standards. So now it consists of the scope of the standard, the fundamental concepts and quality management principles, terms and definitions. These are very, very important because in many cases, what we understand by common parlance of English may be different from what the ISO says. So the terms are clearly defined related to persons, organizations, activity, process, system, requirement, result, data, etc., audit. So these terms are clearly defined. So if you see, this document will go into pages. I think there are totally 60 pages of this kind of a document. Okay. Go back. Okay. So this is the fundamentals and vocabulary, which is the ISO 9000-2015. Now, ISO 9001-2015 quality management systems is relating to quality management systems requirements. Now, ISO 9000 family is the world's most best known quality management standard for companies and organizations of any size. Actually, it need not be that only large organizations. And in fact, there has been cases in England where even a one-man person organization has been certified for ISO 9000. This system is generic. Generic in the sense it could be a shop, it could be a manufacturing company, organization of anything, automobile or food or anything. It could be a hospital. It could be an educational institution. In fact, long back, one of the hospitals which I am associated with was, of course, this doctor himself came from England. So his was the first ISO 9000 hospital in my city of Mysore. Similarly, as I told you, we had ISO 9001-2015 for our school about 4 years back. So it can be for any organization. It is generic in nature. That means it does not prescribe exactly what it is, but the definitions, what and terms and conditions, vocabulary apply to this organization. ISO 9001-2015 for QMS requirements can be certified ISO 9000-2015 cannot be certified because it's only telling you what is the fundamentals and vocabulary. There is also ISO 9004-2018 quality management. This again cannot be certified. It is only a guideline for you to follow. It is like you are attending this class, but then suppose there is no exam and no certificate which will be given to you, and you are here only for learning out of your own curiosity. That could be one way. Like in universities, we have students who attend some classes for which they don't give exams. It is called audit course. That is, they are allowed to sit, of course, with the permission of the HOD and the principal, that they are allowed to sit in those classes, but they have to follow the rules and regulation of attendance and many other things. But they won't give the examination, they won't get a certificate. So ISO 9004 is something like that, right? Whereas ISO 9001-2015 can be certified, right? You can't say I am following ISO 9001. You cannot say that. Then it is a false statement. You can only say I am certified for ISO 9001-2015. Now I will digress a little bit here because this is very, very important, especially after 2015, that the United Nations General Assembly, consisting of more than 170 plus countries, came together and they set up certain goals called Sustainable Development Goals. Because we are aware today that there are a lot of things which are going wrong in the world and even the universe, that because of many things, the countries are very poor, there are wars happening, there are floods and volcanoes erupting, unseasonal rains, name the problems, they're all there. These are all because the countries themselves have not regulated themselves on many of the issues which relate not only to them, but it affects the neighbor and affects everybody else. So they came up with what is called as the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. ISO 9000 has many standards which affect each one of them. That is, who are out of all the 17. Quickly, I will go through for you to know that Sustainable Development Goal 1 and all these have been given certain targets to be fulfilled by 2030. Incidentally, India, if you have heard of it, that our alternate energy, we have already met our target of 2025 in 2022 itself. So you can imagine, but every country has been given a target of 2030, what they should achieve, preferably the ultimate. And there are no poverty. There are 349 standards which somehow touch upon this. Zero hunger. The figure given below is the number of standards which are in that area. Good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnerships for the goals. These are all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs as we roughly call them. Out of which, of course, you will see that majority of them is in the industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Obviously, we are all almost close to 13,000 out of the 25,000. is in more than half is in that area, but it also touches various other, I mean, almost all of them. Right. Now we come to, when we talk about quality management systems, we must understand what is quality. See this, and ISO itself has defined, ISO defines quality as the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics of an object fulfills requirements. Please note that the word object means anything perceivable or conceivable, and therefore the term quality can be used relative to both tangible and intangible. So that is why after 2008 or something, they say the product means products and services. Right. Now we come to ISO 9001-2015 series. Now in this, ISO 9001 is prepared by ISO Technical Committee number 176. This is only for information. The standards was first issued in 1987. I have personally been involved in the standards from 1994 onwards. And 1997, we ourselves got certified for ISO 9001. So from there, we have these, after about 5 years or 3, the technical committees continuously keep meeting, and what is the current thinking, and based on that, what are the requirements and changes and the feedback they get, they will change the standard. If there is a version change, you see, like those of you who are familiar with the software terminologies, when there is a version change, the system standard immediately will have a new year, the change year after the colon, which we have. So first standard was called ISO 9001, 1987. Then it became ISO 9001, 1994. ISO 9001, 2000. ISO 9001, 2018. And currently it is ISO 9001, 2015. Of course, 2015 has had some changes to 2018, but it is still called 2015. Only the 9004 is called 2018. The recommendations, the standards for recommendation. ISO 9000 series is an international standards for quality systems. It tells manufacturers and suppliers, organizations, what is required of a quality-oriented systems. Applicable to whether the organization employs 10 people or 10,000 people, right? Or even anything more than that. Presently, more than 1 million companies have taken certificates. So you can imagine, this is worldwide, of course. ISO 9001-2015 specifies requirements for a quality management system when an organization needs to demonstrate its ability to consistently provide products and services. You see the word used, operating word is consistently. See, we saw when we were talking about quality also, quality means consistent quality. It doesn't mean the best quality or superior quality or excellent quality. You should be able to demonstrate your ability to consistently provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, and aims to enhance customer satisfaction through the effective application of the system. You develop a system and the system is certified, you need to follow the system. It is not that it is a you got the certificate so you can start doing anything. That should not happen. That you should be continuously follow the system, including processes for improvement of the system, because no system by definition is imperfect. So you need to continuously monitor yourself and see where all you can improve, and the assurance of conformity to customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, because these can keep changing. Statutory and regulatory requirements within a country to which you belong to and where these standards apply, right? They can vary. And so you need to be abreast of that. You can't say that ISO says so we will not follow the regulatory system. No, it cannot happen. All the requirements of ISO 9000-2015 are generic. Generic means applicable to any type of an organization and are intended to be applicable to any organization regardless of its type or size or the products or services it provides. What you should note is that ISO 9001-2015 is a system standard. It is not a product standard. For product standards, in our country, we have BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards, which does like if you find the BIS mark on electric iron, on various products which you buy, which will have certain BIS standards. ISO tells you what to do. Does not tell you how to do it, because how to do it is a process which each organization will have its own process. Although the input and the output may be different for any particular type of product, the way it is done is unique to your organization. Like in a hospital, there is a patient who comes in, let us say with a cancer or something, the desired output is that he finishes all the chemotherapy and this and that and all that, and then he comes out as a treated healthy patient. ISO does not say how you have to do it, but once you have decided how you will do it, you will document that process and ensure that you follow it uniformly. That is important. Any other hospital may do it differently, but that should be consistent. How to do it is left to the organization. This is what very important. Now, we were been talking about quality management systems in the definitions where so far we have seen. What is these quality management systems? Principles of this. There are basically 8 principles. If you see there are 8 quadrants. On the topmost, if you see, is the customer focus. In fact, when we talked about TQM also, we said the first principle of TQM is an unwavering focus on the customer. And we talked about customers which are both internal and external. So here also in ISO 9000 series, the QMS principle talks about customer focus. The next important thing for ISO 9000 to be implemented and operated and consistently maintained is the leadership role in maintaining the ISO 9000 systems in the organization. Third important, they are definitely you can say graded accordingly, is the involvement of people, all the people in the organization. Then the approach of the QMS should be a process approach. It is not a people approach. Invariably, what happens in our organizations, when something goes wrong, immediately the management will say, put the blame on the person, right? Something goes wrong, they'll say, Subir, what did you do? Correct. No, that should not be the approach in ISO 9000. Because if something has gone wrong, it may be that you are only handling that equipment may be faulty. Something is wrong. So you must look at the process which has gone wrong. Similarly, the systems approach, because in a system approach, there is a total system and there are subsystems. A problem in the subsystem can be due to some other cause, may be somewhere else. Like we talked about the cause and effect diagram. The cause is somewhere else, the effect is somewhere else. So you must look at the system as a whole and have a systems approach. The foundation of ISO 9000 and any quality system is this continual improvement. Whatever you are today, it cannot be stationary. It has to be continuously evolved. The products have to be improved, processes have to be improved, people have to be trained. You have to innovate and come up with new methods of doing things. So the thinking should always be, what is it that I can do better today than what I did yesterday? So continual improvement is a bedrock of the QMS principles. Factual approach for decisions. Usually what happens is invariably, like there are people who jump to conclusion. The moment they see a problem, they immediately, either out of experience or through a gut feeling, they say, yes, this is due to this. And they take the decision based on that. In ISO 9000, that is not how you should do it. You must collect facts and figures, put them, analyze them, and then based on those, whether it is for planning or for implementation or for any other new product or anything for that matter, the approach should be using facts. Next important QMS principle is mutually beneficial supplier relationship. As we saw in the Deming 14 principles, which we did on quality, and I also told you how the Japanese will say that their suppliers are their sister companies. Even if it is not to that level, we must have a mutual, beneficial relationship with our supplier. In fact, I've seen this in operation, way back when I was even in my second job, when we used to go and, supply something to Voltas, Voltas is again a Tata company. See, and they're very ethical companies, They will ask you a lot of details. You may think that they are trying to cut down, the price, your price, but actually no. What has been, they have been told that if a person does not have even a 10% profit, we should not do business with him. They can succeed only when the supplier is also succeeds. So the approach itself is that mutually beneficial supplier relationship. I've seen this in action in many companies. And I have personally followed this also in the 35 plus years of my running a manufacturing organization. So these are the 8 QMS principles, quality management system principles, based on which the standards is revolving around. Again, I'll just go through in brief. This is as written in ISO 9000. So these words are important. Customer focus. Organizations should strive to understand their current and future customers in order to better meet their requirements and expectations. Leadership. Leaders are responsible for creating a productive and progressive business environment. The onus is on the leadership. It should be strong, purposeful, and unifying. These are the words used in the standards. Involvement of people. As an employer, it is vital to ensure that your teams are motivated and engaged in the company as a whole. Process approach. Developing processes for every area of your business, from sales to marketing, finance to HR, will ensure that resources are used most effectively, resulting in cost-effective and consistent results. Systems approach. The management perspective, which advocates that any problem should be seen as a system as a whole, which is made up of a hierarchy of subsystems. continual improvement, the ongoing improvement of products, services, or processes through incremental and breakthrough improvements. See, in continual improvement, as I say, it could be on the product, it could be service, or it could be on the process. It could be an incremental increment, or it could be a breakthrough improvement. It need not be every time that you invent something very big. It could be a very small improvement, but there should be an improvement. The thinking should be towards that. Factual approach to decisions. Effective decisions are made based on rational analysis of data. Of course, even after doing that, sometimes the managers take a decision based on their gut feelings or experience or whatever. But still, the factual rational analysis of data should be the basis on which you take the decisions. Mutually beneficial supplier relationship between your company and any suppliers must be mutually beneficial in order to add value to both the parties. System requirements. ISO 9001-2015 Quality Management System requirements. ISO 9001-2015 specifies requirements too. Now, each of these words, read carefully. They are loaded to plan, establish, implement, operate, monitor, review, maintain, and continually improve a documented management system used to manage quality. The requirements set in ISO 9001-2015 are generic, flexible, and useful to all types of organizations. The core concepts of when he's talking about the new clause structure is actually because the earlier standard was 2018, and then there is a substantial jump, and the earlier standard had 8 clauses. Now it has got 10 clauses, and then the clauses themselves have undergone a lot of change. So that is why he says the core concepts of the new clause structure include management, customer requirements, policy, procedure, planning, performance, objective, control, monitoring, measurement, auditing, decision-making, corrective action, and non-conformity. Some of these were not clearly specified in the earlier one. It is not that it was not specified, but it was clearly not specified. In fact, some of them, like risk management, is also something new in the 2015 clauses. The ISO 9001 standard requires your organization addresses 7 key areas. Plus, there are 3 initially, 0, 1, 2, 3 is also there. Plus 7 key areas, also known as clauses, in order to achieve continual improvement within your quality management system. Clauses 0 to 3. 0 is introduction, 1 is scope, 2 is normative reference, and 3 is terms and definitions. Now, there is nothing to follow in this. These are just guidelines or what you should do. Here onwards, it is you have to write and commit in your manual. Clause 4 is context with the guidelines of the system. Clause 4 is context of the organization. Clause 5 is leadership. Clause 6 is planning. Clause 7 is support. Clause 8 is operation. Clause 9 is performance evaluation. And clause 10 is improvement. We'll get into a little bit detail on this as now. As I said, in 2008, there are only 8 clauses. In 2015, in fact, it has been very well laid out as compared to 2008. So since we are been involved right from the beginning, we are seeing the changes and how important some of these changes are. We talked about PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, or the Deming cycle, right? Sometime earlier when we talked in quality. So suppose I have to put these 8 clauses into, this 7 clauses rather, into 7 key areas or clauses, you'll see that 4 of them, leadership, planning, support, and context of the organization, all 4 come under the planning stage. Only the operation comes in the do stage. Performance evaluation comes in the check stage, and improvement comes in the act stage. So you can imagine, like in any management role in the organization, planning takes a major impact rather. So briefly, we'll get into some of these clauses. I'm not getting into details, but then to introduce, because this is what will tell you the flavor of ISO 9001, especially. 0.1. Clause 0 is introduction. Of course, it shouldn't be called 0, but then we call it 0 for that matter, whatever. 0.1 starts with the strategic decision to adopt QMS. In fact, it should not happen that somebody has forced you to do the quality management system. The top management and the people in the organization should be willing to. In fact, I'll tell you, my own, in my case of the manufacturing company, I was the boss. I was the CEO. I was the managing director, so I could take a decision. But even before we took a decision, we had a 1-week workshop with all my employees, convincing them that this is something which we need to adopt. In the school where I was, it took me 3 years to convince my people that they must go for ISO 9000. Imagine. So sometimes it takes a lot of time for people to get convinced that, yes, you need to follow certain systems like this. So unless that is adopted, then everything will fail, because ultimately it has to be managed by people, and people don't agree to do it or willingly do it, passionately do it with knowing what are the benefits of doing it. They will not, the system is bound to fail. So strategic decision, that is number 1 in 0.1.1, is strategic decision, adoption of QMS. Then comes the QMS design and implementation, which is specific to the organization. Standards can be used by internal and external parties to assess the ability to. Your following the standards can be used by yourself, your own departments, or external parties, like it could be a supplier, it could be a customer, or a customer abroad. In fact, this whole ISO came into being because of exports. Many countries abroad, and especially the European countries, were insisting that the supplier must have an ISO 9001 certification. And that's what started this whole thing, because it, again, as you see, it started in England, and then all of Europe. In fact, if you see, most of their headquarters is in Geneva. They're in France, Germany, UK, all that. Of course, US. Of course, it is there in all that. As we said, 167 countries are adopting this. So it could be used by the internal and external parties to assess the ability to meet customer, regulatory, and organization's own requirements. All the 3. Customer requirement, regulatory requirement, because regulatory can be specific to, need not be generic. It can be from country to country, it may vary. And organization's own requirements. Like if you take, as I told you, if you take the house of, let us say, Tata's and many organizations, their requirements may be much more stringent than what the regulatory requirements are. So it has to meet all 3. The quality management system requirements specified in this international standards are complementary to requirements for products and services. Mind you, we told that it is a system standard and not a products and services standard. But you cannot violate the standard of a product or a service. Like even within ISO 9000, we have many things, like we saw about that educational organizations. Now, if there is some clause in educational organizations, or for that matter, IT security, now that will not be subservient to the ISO 9001. In fact, both are to be there together. It has to be read together. That is why it's a word used is complementary. This international standard employs the process approach. These are the main three things if you see in the ISO 2015. Process approach, of course, it was there in 2008 also, which incorporates the Plan, Do, Check, Act or the PDCA cycle. And 2015 started this risk-based thinking. What are the risks in the processes? How do you mitigate the risk and how do you prevent the risks from affecting the process? Right. Just like in a hospital, the biggest risk is of any bacterial growth or, and the various strains of bacteria and making it necessary for not all antibiotics work on all the kind of bacteria or viruses. In fact, I was telling you in Gangaram Hospital, every 15 days there is a detailed group of people are constantly working on what are the current strain of bacteria, what is the genetic nature of it, what antibiotics will work on it. Such studies are done once in 15 days. I've seen it in work, operating. So that is they are preventing a risk from happening, not waiting for something to happen. So ISO, this one, the clauses, as you said, 0 was introduction, 0.1 we saw earlier, 0.2 is quality management principles. They are the 8 ones, the customer focus, leadership, engagement of people, process approach, improvement, evidence-based decision making, and relationship management. That is specified in the standard. Then the process itself is defined. In fact, in the very first standard, IS in 1997, a process was described as input, process, and output. But now it has expanded a little that activities or a process has an input, there are controls which are on the process, resources are given to the process, and with all these three, the output comes three. So the process is defined as this as a whole. If you take it in a flowchart basis, process A has an input to that, then there is a next process B. That process A output can also go to process C, let us say. Process B can get output from other processes, and these combined goes to the next process. Maybe it could be a D. Process C output also goes to D, and there are some external inputs which goes to process D, and then there is an output. This or any other complications can be there. But typically this kind of a thing, there is an input, process, output. Input, 1, 2 inputs, process, output. This has 1, 2, 3 inputs, process D, to output. This is typically how processes happen. So Plan, Do, Check, Act, or the Deming cycle, you can talk this way: plan, do, check, act, and then after when after you do the actions, depending upon the output of the how it is analyzed, you change the plan or you continue with the plan. So the plan is about establishing objectives and procedures. The do part of it is about the implementation. The check part of it is about measurements and meters, you can say. Act is about taking action on continuous improvement, or CI is a continuous improvement. And in this is the basic Deming cycle, which is used in all the processes within the ISO. So a model of a process-based QMS, quality management system, consists of, starts with the management responsibility, providing resources so that there is a resource management, using these resources and customers' inputs. As you see here, a product realization takes place, product and the continuous measurement of an analysis and improvement in all the processes, then the output goes to customers. These are supplier, that is a customers. So this is the model of a process-based QMS. 0.1 you saw, 0.2 you saw, now 0.3 is process approach. The basis of ISO is that it is every activity, what you otherwise would call is a process. So the general clause 0.3.1 is understanding and managing interrelated processes as a system, contributes the organization's effectiveness and efficiency in achieving its intended results. This approach enables the organization to control the interrelationships and interdependencies among the processes of the system, so that the overall performance of the organization can be enhanced. As you saw, that systems are interrelated. You see, like if your resources in a hospital, unless you have the doctors, nurses, beds, oxygen, ventilator, now, we have had those problems. Yeah, so you need everything to be coordinated and given, and systems must work. The different departments must do their jobs. You see, so the systems are all interrelated. Now, this is straight, the diagram is from ISO manual itself. If you see the schematic representation of the elements of a single process, source of inputs, meaning it starts from in source of inputs, predecessor processes, that means the previous process is an input for the next process. Conversely, we say the next process is the customer, as it is frequently quoted. For example, at providers, internal or external customers, other relevant interested parties, sources of inputs. Inputs could be from either matter, energy, information, depending upon what process you are taking place, in the form of materials, resources, requirements, activities which go on. There is a starting of an activity, there is an ending of an activity. Inside this, there can be a complex set of processes which go on. You need possible controls and checkpoints to monitor and measure performance. It is not necessarily that you check only here and there. It could be that every point in the process you need to undertake checks and controls. Then the outputs of these activities using these inputs output could be a matter, energy, or information. And receivers of outputs are the subsequent processes or external customers or internal customers at other relevant interested parties. This by definition is what is the process in ISO 9000. 0.3.2, we are still in the introduction stage. Planned, because we need to define things very clearly before you take up further. So plan, do, check, act cycle. The PDCA cycle can be briefly described as follows. Plan is to establish the objectives of the system and its processes and the resources needed to deliver results in accordance with the customer's requirements. So the end is the customer's requirements, and you need to plan all the systems, processes, resources, inputs, material, men, everything to provide customer requirements and the organization's policies and identify and address risks and opportunities. As I said, you need to identify all this, plan for this rather. Do, implement what was planned, check, monitor and measure processes and the resulting products and services against policies, objectives, requirements, and planned activities, and report the results. Whom do you report to? Depending upon the level of information needed at various levels in the organization. Even a hospital, that certain things need to be known at the operational level to the nurses. Some may be needed to be known to the doctors. Some may be to the HOD. And there are some which need to be known only to the board. So various levels of information will be there. And the board need not know what is the temperature, pulse, and other things of a single patient, right? They are not, they won't be interested. So the check and information provided is depending on the level to which such information is passed on to and how they use it. Act, take actions to improve performance as necessary. The same thing as taken from the standard. If you see that this is the depiction of the PDCA, the PDCA cycle 0.3.2, organization and its context, customer requirements, needs and expectations relevant interested parties. From these, you do the planning. Using the support and operations in the organization, you do what you need to be done. By performance evaluation, you do the check whatever has been done. Understand, assimilate, analyze, measure, analyze, all that to understand what can be improved and use that for planning. So planning has not just 3 inputs, but it also uses the act 1, 2, 3, and 4. The output of the PDCA is the results of the QMS in terms of products and services and customer satisfaction. This, in short, is the PDCA cycle as defined in the manual. 0.3.3 is on risk-based thinking. Now, this was not there in the 2008 manual. This has been introduced in the 2015, and aptly so, because we are living in a world of uncertainty, and the uncertainty is driving many organizations to constantly struggle for getting things done or satisfactorily. So the risk-based thinking has to not only be of, usually the CEO of an organization is the chief risk manager, because like I know when I'm running an organization, many times I have sleepless nights when some materials are not there, then there is a transport strike or there is a going to be a power shutdown, or there are hundreds of that material supplier is delaying the supplies. Now, it is not only there are internal risks also. So it is not that only the CEO or the main person in the organization or a few people must only understand the risk. The risk must be there in every single process, and the process owner should also take into account these risks. So the risk-based thinking is something which is very important and included in this 2015. To conform to the requirements of this international standard, an organization needs to plan and implement actions to address risks and opportunities. Opportunities can arise as a result of a situation favorable to achieving an intended result. For example, a set of circumstances that allows the organization to attract customers. No, risk does not mean only negative. That's what he is trying to say. It could be an opportunity. Like this current virus, when it happened in the last 2 years, there are many organizations who have suddenly got extra business and doing very well. Of course, starting from hospitals to all the suppliers for in the healthcare segment. Cleaning, in fact, I know one of my friends who is running a cleaning equipment and consumables organization. He has doubled his turnover within the last 2 years. No, it's an opportunity, right? But you have to rise to that opportunity because your customers are dependent on it. So risks also mean opportunities. A set of circumstances that allow the organization to attract customers, develop new products and services, reduce waste, or improve productivity. Thirdly, actions to address opportunities can also include consideration of associated risks. Risk is the effect of uncertainty, and any such uncertainty can have positive or negative effects. Like I said, it could be an opportunity or a negative effect. A positive deviation arising from a risk can provide an opportunity, but not all positive effects of risks result in opportunities. 0.4 in the introduction, relationship with other management system standards. See, basically ISO 9001-2015 is a base standard or now there are many other standards which like ISO 14000, which is the environmental system standards, and there can be energy systems standards. Now all these a company can may want to follow or get certified for these standards also. Now, if they do that, then it means that all these standards are working together. The standard is intended to be compatible with the other systems. For example, ISO 9000 or 14000, but it does not include certain other standards like or financial management, because that is not a part of ISO, this one. Occupational health and safety management. ISO 9001. Now we come to the clauses 1 to 10. Shall we take a small break, Subir? Huh?
Yes, sir.
गला थोड़ा सूख गया.
Yes, sir.
5 minutes. Because now only the clauses are there. I've taken up the general thing. Or shall we continue and finish it, as you say?
Yes.
Huh?
Sir, okay.
I'll continue. Okay. Because you're the only person, because others are going to listen to it only then.
Okay.
Now, one is a scope. Again, as I told you, clauses 0, 1, 2, 3 are only description. It is not something to follow. But you need to understand what they are. Clause 1, we saw only the 0 introductory so far. Now the scope, number 1 is scope. This international standard specifies requirements of a quality management system when an organization needs to demonstrate its ability to consistently provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory regulatory requirements. The first definition itself. The scope is exhaustive in nature and aims to enhance customer satisfaction through effective application of the system, including processes for improvement. Again, that's a major thing, and the assurance of conformity to customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. Here, the second one is that improvement of the system. All the requirements of this international standards are generic and are intended to apply to any organization. Normative references. When you say normative references, it means that you shall follow or meaning by understanding and implementing what the vocabulary in ISO 9000 is used. You cannot have your own vocabulary or look up a Oxford dictionary or a Cambridge dictionary and say Cambridge says dictionary says so it will be like this. No, whatever the standard defines, that is why there is a full standard and 60 pages we saw, of that fundamentals and vocabulary. They are non-negotiable. So the following documents, that is why you give an undertaking saying that the following documents in whole or in part are normatively referenced to this document and are indispensable for its application. For dated references, only the edition cited applies. For undated references, the latest edition of the reference document applies. Like when you say ISO 9001-2015, or you just say ISO 9001, you cannot say, no, I meant 2008. No, when you don't say follow it by the year, then the latest is implied. Now, that is what the references mean. And all the definitions which are there is based on this vocabulary, which I showed you in the first thing. Number 3, terms and definitions. For the purpose of this document, the terms and definitions given in ISO 9000-2015 apply. Earlier, we were talking about supplier and purchase and other things. Now the word used is supply chain. Supply chain means supplier, organization, customer. In fact, the classical definition of supply chain management is supplier, 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 supplier. Organization, customer, customers, customer, customers, customer. It goes actually 5 places there and 5 places here. Product. What is a product? Product is nothing but a result of a process. Product could be a physical product. It can be intangible product. It could be information. Right. There are 3 things, as you saw in the introductory this thing of in 0 clause. The 4 generic product categories is recognized in ISO, which is hardware, could be engine, mechanical, whatever, and all that kind of thing. Software, computer programs, services like transport, banks, hospitals, all that. Processed material, which includes food, paper, etc. Context of the organization. 4.1, understanding of the organizations and its context. The organization shall, see the word shall, according to the normative reference, means that it is not should. Shall means it is mandatory. There is no negotiation on that. It is compulsory. You have to do it. So you cannot interpret this shall in any other way. The organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and its strategic decision and that affect its ability to achieve the intended results of its quality management system. The organization shall monitor and review information about these external and internal issues. Now, for each one of these clauses, now all these 4 onwards to 10, you have to demonstrate how you do it in your manual. How is it addressed in the manual? See, you don't write the manual, 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. You write the manual the way you want, but each one of these clauses in ISO 9000 you should be able to show that your manual, that you're able to fulfill these clauses. Understanding the needs and expectation of interested parties, determining the scope of quality management system. Quality management systems and its processes, the organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve a quality management system. To the extent necessary, the organization shall maintain documented information to support its processes, retain documented information to have confidence that the processes are carried out as planned. Usually there is a thing that how long do you retain the things? There is a statutory thing in the government that there is a statute meaning of how many years you need to hold certain data. It is prescribed. I don't know whether it is 12 years or something like that, some kind of a thing. Or you can specify in your own manual saying that, if 12 is the thing, you will maintain for 15 years, you will say that, yes, all these documented will be maintained for that many years. So it depends on that. But then why that is needed? Because when something goes wrong, you should be able to have a traceability of the processes and where it has gone wrong and how it has gone wrong based on the readings which has been noted and things like that. Just to give you an example, 4.4, the quality management system, in that you say the organization shall establish, document, implement, maintain, and the QMS, and continually improve its effectiveness. This is the primary duty of the management. Now, the documentation requirements are, see, you can imagine if it is a small organization, there need not be many levels. But in a very large organization, like Infosys or whatever, they're big organization, you can't have a comprehensive document at one place. The corporate office is somewhere, then the branches are somewhere, the actual some departments are in some places, others are there, like the training center is in Mysore. There are so many complications. So ISO has realized that you can have 4 levels of documentation. Level 1 documentation is a quality manual. Company level document, corporate QMS manual describes the quality policy. It also contains a vision, mission of the company, etc. References to procedures. Now, these reference to procedures, level 2 starts with the procedures, because these may be different in different places and depend upon the functions, departments, and things like that. So the procedures are the function and department level. Described activities. Now, these activities are nothing but work instructions at operating levels, control instructions, traceable to level 1 and level 2 documents. Formats and records, day-to-day requirements, form of tags, stickers, register, etc. Data and facts. These are the level 4 of the document. Now, we'll see some of the examples. There are 3 examples which I've given how the processes are classified when you write a manual. One is a process industry. It could be process or whatever, any type of an industry. Basically, we classify in three ways: core processes, management processes, and support processes. In a process industry, the core processes is all that which is related to directed towards the customer. There may or may not be design of the product, but in most of the industry, there is a design of the product. There is a system for establishing quality. There is a system of manufacture and a system of delivery. Supporting these core processes, on the left side, you have a purchase function which supplies material here. Calibration services for calibrating the equipment which are used in manufacture. Training for training the manpower who are involved in the core processes and other processes. Documentation, which could be either in-house or outsourced, and record control. These are support processes. What drives these two are the management processes. Management review, the periodic review, if it says that it has once in 6 months, it is to be reviewed based on, again, the internal audit, monitoring and measurement processes, resource management processes, CA and PA means corrective action and preventive action processes, customer satisfaction, how it is evaluated, recorded, acted upon. Now, healthcare, Subir, you can see in healthcare, you can define some more core processes because it is taken by, maybe written by somebody who is not in that field, but still, counseling and assessment of patients, because generally whenever a new patient comes in, either a patient itself or the patient's attendant or family needs to be counseled, right? What is wrong? What is the procedure you have to do? All that. They should need to understand. It is similar to, the review with a customer in manufacturing or any other process for that matter. Counseling and assessment, admission and care. Of course, you just put the both big chunk into one: admission and care, and discharge. Discharge processes definitely has to be followed. Not only for the organization, but for statutorily also, you have to follow certain discharge procedures. Just a patient cannot just walk out, by himself, or just verbally telling a person to go. Support management processes. They need to provide resources. They need to review either daily, whatever, method of reviewing what is happening to those patients. When the customer is being discharged, the patient is being discharged, ensure that he is satisfied and how is it recorded. And there is an internal audit which takes on periodically. Could be once in 15 days or once in a month or quarterly, whatever is specified. Support processes, human resource training, facility management. This is very big especially in the hospitality, hotel and things, maintaining the facilities is very, very important. They are not the same, but they have their own important areas to be looked into. Premises, equipment, calibration, in materials management, purchase, stores, documents, records. These are the support processes. In case of software, core processes are customer related because you are making either a custom built software or standard software for a wide section of customers. Design, so there's a small spelling mistake here. develop. Design could be designing the architecture of the software, could be writing the code itself. Develop is the code writing. Monitor, there is a quality procedures which are there to check the quality of the software. Of course, today a lot of quality is automated in the software industry itself. And deployment. Deployment is very important because many times you hear in software that on-site, the people have to go and ensure that it is properly implemented there. Management processes, again, providing resources, reviewing, customer satisfaction, internal audit. And support processes is again similar to that. HR and training, facility management, premises, equipment, calibration, materials management, purchase, stores, documents and records. The fifth clause is on leadership. 5.1 is on leadership and commitment. 5.1.1 is on general, 5.1.2 on the customer focus. See, the customer focus is directly related, starts from the leadership. Policy, establishing the quality policy. Now, quality policy is a statement which, along with vision and mission statement of the organization, this is could be a short term, but it should be clearly stated that what is it that you will do to ensure quality of the systems in the organization. Communicating the quality policy to all the stakeholders within and outside the organization. Organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Starts with, let us say, the organization structure. It should be clearly understood by everybody. What are all the authorities, responsibilities, and of the organization, of each person in the organization. Top management shall ensure that the responsibilities and authorities for relevant roles are assigned, communicated, and understood within the organization. Planning. Clause 6 on planning, actions to address risks and opportunities. So as I told you, 2015 clause has this risks and opportunities. 2008 did not have it. When planning for quality management system, the organization shall consider the issues referred to 4.1 and the requirements referred to in 4.2, as we saw earlier, and determine the risks and opportunities that are needed to be addressed to. The organization shall plan actions to address these risks and opportunities. 6.2, quality objectives and planning to achieve them. The organization shall establish quality objectives at relevant functions, levels, and processes needed for the QMS. When planning, what do you plan for? How to achieve these quality objectives, the organization shall determine. Now, it is not necessarily for the organization as a whole. It could be for each of the processes. It could be for different departments, functions within this organization. What are the objectives? Who is responsible to do it? At what time intervals they will do, and how they will do it? All these have to be clearly defined. And planning of changes. Whenever there is a change, this is something extremely important in the ISO 9000, that when you don't have a documented manual, what happens is when some new boss or a person has come to your department, he will straight away say, I'm sure you must have experienced, Subir. A new boss comes and says that, oh, this is all rubbish. Now you don't do this, you do it this way. I'm sure you must have heard sometimes, right? Now, in a system like ISO 9000, you just cannot do something which is verbally. If you want to make a change, then you have to create a change document. Of course, you can make changes, you should make changes, You must create a change document. All the interested parties to that particular process has to agree and the new process to be written, and then that should substitute the change process, and the earlier process which was just documented has to be preserved so that we should know that what was there earlier and what is there now. So planning for changes, when the organization determines the need for changes to the quality management system, the changes shall be carried out in a planned manner. So this is what is the way it is done. Not just that one boss comes and says that whatever you are doing now so far is not the right way. I'll tell you how to do it, and goes about. So each of the people start doing it, then there is no consistency and there is no system. That is why this says that. Support. Support starts from resources. It is a management's responsibility to provide resources for realization of any product or process, sub-product or sub-process, or at the gross level or even at the individual operation level. General, the organization shall determine and provide the resources. Resources can be raw material, consumable, components, assemblies, manpower, equipment, tools, energy, alternate energy. You can think of anything and everything which goes into the product realization. So the organization shall determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the QMS. 7.1.2, the people, is about people. Point 3 is about infrastructure. Point 4 is environment for the operation of the processes. Here, when I say environment, means all the area around the operation, cleanliness, lighting, ventilation, all that. 7.1.5 is monitoring and measuring resources, right? Whether you need a vernier calipers or you want a screw gauge or RS, interfaced to a computer, all that, whatever. General and measurement traceability. This is very, very important. Organizational knowledge, that everybody has the requisite knowledge about the organization. Competence, that people associated are provided the required competence. You can't take somebody and then put them on the job without proper training and assessment and expect the person to do the job. Awareness, in fact, in competence, many organizations, when they use alternate people, we have a competence matrix which is drawn up and exhibited in the individual workstation. If let us say 3 people, although the operation may require, let us say 1 person, but there are 2 other alternatives in case of this person falls sick or it doesn't report for work. Alternatives are, say, Y and Z, but Y has a competence level of, let us say, 4 out of 5, whereas X could be 5 out of 5, Y is 4 out of 5, and Z is 3 out of 5. Now, it is the management to, once you put the alternative person of a different competence in that particular job, it is like in the doctors, experienced doctor and a intern, let us say. Intern's competence level will obviously be somewhere near average or below average compared to a very experienced doctor who will have a 5-on-5 scale, right? But if you expect the doctor is not available and there is an emergency, obviously you have to use the intern or a junior doctor to do the job. But you should know what to expect out of the result out of that. That is very important. So the competence should be very clearly defined. Awareness of all the processes for the people working in that, and communication. All the changes and other things should be communicated to everybody. So resource management, like just give it in a tabular form. Human factors could be creative work methods, opportunities for greater involvement of people, safety rules and guidance, special features for people, social interaction. In physical factors, obviously cleanliness, the proper ventilation, vibration, noise, light, hygiene, humidity, pollution, airflow, all these are resources as required for that particular job. 7.5, in fact, that is one of the most important things in ISO 9000, documenting of the information. The primary basis of this is that you cannot improve something unless you have documented and analyzed. You cannot analyze something if you're not documented. So the primary thing to be done in any and all the processes which happens is that documentation of the information and the flow which is there from process to process. So documented information, 7.5.1 is general. The organization's quality management system shall include documented information required by this international standard, documented information determined by the organization as being necessary for the effectiveness of the quality. So it is one of the standards requirement that may not be exhaustive, but the organization's requirement may be, which may be highly, very exhaustive. Creating and updating the documentation is very important. Control of the documentation information, who has access, who doesn't have access, and how it is maintained. Documented information required by the quality management system and by this standard shall be controlled to ensure that it is available and suitable for use where and when it is needed and protected. For the control of documented information, the organization shall address distribution, access, retrieval and use, storage and preservation, control of changes, retention and disposition. Now you'll see that actual operation of the process is now coming. You can imagine in a organization which does not follow, of course, everybody follows some system or the other, otherwise the organizations won't work. But if it is not very systematic as in ISO 9000, then a lot of this, whatever we have talked so far, 0 to 7, may not be working fully or documented fully, right? Or work according to the individual whims and fancies. So now, having established all this, now comes the operation. Actually, what is the do? Because as you saw that in the PDCA cycle, this is the only thing where the do part of it is there. Operational planning and control, design and development of products and services, which is done systematically, and control of externally provided processes, products and services. ISO 9000 gives a lot of emphasis on the externally provided processes, products and services, how we are able to control and safeguard these, including customers' property, as they say, products and service provisions, release of products and services, control of non-conforming outputs. Usually, this is the most important thing which you say. It could be outputs from any stage of manufacture or the resultant output. What do you do with this? Like for example, we have in a particular process, let us say welding of two wires onto the two sides of a cylindrical object. Now, if suppose in that process, that somewhere in between some of the output of that process have not come out properly, what do you do? Do you put in the accepted bin or you put it in the reject bin? In fact, we used to do it in a very simple way, in the sense that we do not even put it in the reject bin, because sometimes, some people may take from the reject bin and put it on their thing by mistake or something intentionally. We ensured that they destroy it. You cut the leads. If something is non-conforming, you destroy it. If so, it's like a paper. In an office one, if you find that a paper is obsolete or is wrongly typed, now you don't keep it anywhere. You immediately put it into a shredder, shredding machine, and ensure that it is destroyed. How do you treat non-conforming outputs at various stages of the processes and the end stage is extremely, extremely important. This is where mistakes happen. People do by mistake take what is kept aside as not conforming or to be rejected. How do you treat rejected items? In fact, many times when the auditors come, they go and see this first. How is it? However you return in your process, it is like your medicines, in a hospital. If something has already expired, how do you treat them? Correct. Performance evaluation. The last but one is on performance evaluation, monitoring, measuring, analysis, and evaluation. The organization shall determine what needs to be monitored, measured, methods, and analyze results. There is a simple, very simple maxim in this. What can be measured must be measured. And once it is measured, it should be analyzed, because there is no point in measuring something unless you have done some analysis on that. Once you have done some analysis on that, it should be acted upon. So it is very important that when you in an organization, it does not mean that one process has only one measurement. One process can have even 10 or 15 parameters. Like I know I've seen in one organization, there is a process of electroplating. There are 12 different variables in that process, and all of them are monitored. And the basis of this is your statistical process control, or any process control, or Six Sigma, or whatever you tools and techniques which you employ. So what needs to be monitored and measured must be done, and you have to determine what all parameters in each one of the processes you will measure. Record them, analyze them, and do a continual improvement or an act on that. Customer satisfaction, analysis and evaluation, internal audit. Every organization shall do usually when you go for certification, there is a yearly external audit. Usually what happens in ISO 9001, the first time when you audit, you get a certification. Then there are first year, second year, and third year. After that is over, then you have to go for recertification. The second and third year is an external audit by the same agency which has given you the certification. It is not a full examination. It is a sampled examination, you can see. But before you go to that, the internal audit can happen quarterly. It can be happen half yearly. It is recommended that you should do it at least once in 6 months. The organization shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals to provide information on conformance to organization's requirement, how it is met, implemented, and maintained. The organization can plan, establish, implement, and maintain an audit program. What is your program? How it is done? Who has done it? What are the results of the audit? That has to be maintained. Based on this, the management reviews how effectively the QMS is maintained. So the top management shall review the organization's quality management system at planned intervals to ensure its continuing suitability, adequacy, effectiveness, and alignment with the strategic direction of the organization. Management review inputs and management review outputs. Just to give it in a pictorial form, here we have the measurements, analysis and improvement. Plan and implement that. Monitor, measure, analyze, improve. In this, you can use statistical quality control methods. SQC stands for that. Demonstrate conformity to the products, ensure conformity, continuously improve. You can use various tools and techniques for this and methods. Some of them are mentioned here. Of course, I won't get into that detail. Balance scorecard, Six Sigma, business process re-engineering, also called BPR, lean management systems, just-in-time systems, etc. In product, what are the parameters you will use for measurement? There are various things which you can do: temperature, pressure, length, height, weight, thickness, relative hardness. Of course, mechanical engineer. Similarly, in hospital and life sciences, there can be many parameters: parts per million, setup time, field returns, line rejections, etc. In maintenance, it is overall equipment efficiency, oil consumption, energy consumption, etc. In supplier purchase, delivery performance, which is more important, etc. So these parameters you need to determine and monitor. In HR, it could be the attrition rate, how much of training hours per person you've done, and suggestions per employee received, what is the absenteeism rate, productivity. Of course, in most of the companies, the HR management is much better than even many other things. Design, these could be the parameters. And last is the improvement. Improvement consists of the organization shall determine and select opportunities for improvement and implement any necessary actions to meet customer requirements and enhance customer satisfaction. Any management, and especially the top management, must constantly keep looking at opportunities for improvement. So we also call OFI in the audit language, they call it OFIs. And when they see that things are not actually as per what you have stated, they call it as a NCR, non-conformance report. Or NCR and OFIs are very commonly used in audit language. Non-conformity and conformance action could be either corrective action or preventive action. Continual improvement, we have talked about many times. Organizations shall continually improve the effectiveness of the QMS through quality policy, objectives, audit results, analysis of data, corrective action, preventive action, and management. Now, what is corrective action and what is preventive action? Basically, corrective action is when you have seen that something is not going as per what has been expected or planned, you immediately take a corrective action. But having done that, how do you ensure that you prevent that from happening again? That is the preventive action. And you need to demonstrate how did you come up with that by using either a 7QC tools or a 7 management tools or any of those kind of thing. That needs to be demonstrated also, not just off the cuff saying that I'll do it differently. Quality objectives could be like, there can be many quality objectives. It may not be only one, right? Reduce defect rates, achieve growth, reduce power consumption. Usually cost centers, you reduce, others you look for increase. Okay. Consider while establishing quality objective, current and future needs of the organization, relevant findings for the management reviews, self-assessment results, etc. Okay. Corrective action and preventive action, as I said, this is very important. So I'm just taking 2 slides on that. Take corrective action, eliminate the cause of non-conformity, prevent recurrence. This is the total in total. And in preventive action, take action, eliminate the same thing, but the details are different, as you say. And how you determine the preventive action, as I said, must originate from your detailed analysis of what went wrong and what could be the ones will ensure that it doesn't happen again. Okay, so far whatever you have heard is the sum and substance of the ISO. Now, usually when we work in an organization, we work as per what is required of you to do the job, which is in conforming with the rules and regulations of the organization. Rules and regulation as applied to the product or service which you provide to the customer. It is conformance based, basically. Whereas ISO makes you to think in terms of performance and how do you improve performance consistently. So the transition is from conformance to performance. In absence of a system like ISO, you invariably, if something goes wrong, you try to find fault with the person, or try to find fault with the machine. In fact, and the blame keeps going, hierarchically higher. Like, it happens so many times. When there is a railway accident, you immediately say the railway minister has to resign. No, what is the railway minister has got to do with that accident, right? Now, if you know the current minister of railway, Minister Vaishnav, I think if you have seen him on the TV, he's very highly involved. He's himself Harvard graduate and all that. I think, I don't know, one of the, and extremely highly qualified. And he personally goes and visits, of course. Others might go, but here he understands all the processes. He has taken many measures of safety related, because when it comes to anything involving such a huge organization like the railways, safety is the first and primary concern. In spite of that, something can go wrong, either due to negligence, or it could be due to man-made errors or whatever. For which you cannot expect some person like the minister to be responsible. But he ensures that the system is established, and then such kind of accidents or something is kept to the bare minimum. So ISO, a system when you have like this, the emphasis goes from fault finding to fact finding. Let us find out the facts, analyze the facts, take corrective action, take and do preventive action. Steps which are involved in achievement of ISO 9000. Number one, you need a management commitment. You need a training for all the senior managers to start with. Establish a task force for coordinating the ISO activities. This is in case like you want to get into ISO 9000 first. Allocate resources, audit existing quality systems when required for requirement of standards. You see, when we got our ISO I think in 97, our 98 or whatever, I don't remember, around that time, the person who came to as a consultant, he said, you are already 70% there. I said, what do you mean by that? See, we had used for 3 years the services of the Indian Statistical Institute for establishing processes, statistical processes and design of experiment and many of those things. That made us to write manuals for all these processes. But we didn't, of course, know about ISO 9000 and those kind of procedures. So when we decided to go for it, the person who came said that you're already 70% there. So it is very easy. And in a matter of 3 months, within 3 months, we could apply and get our ISO certification. So audit existing quality systems and requirements of standard, identify deficiencies and develop action plan, develop revised document quality system in line with the standard. So that's what we did. What we did was as per ISI, which we changed it to the 9000 standards. Implemented document systems where applicable, train internal auditors, conduct internal audits and take action based on audit findings, conduct management review meetings, contact a certifying body. This is something which is very important. Usually the consultants which you engage to establish ISO 9000, usually they will be linked with one of the certifying bodies. I will come in the next slide. What are those certifying bodies? Or that, see, this is not a government setup. Like you get a license from somebody or a certification from somebody or all that kind of thing. There are internationally certain organizations have been allowed to be certifying bodies, but the nature of these bodies and how well they do their job and how good is your certification depends upon where you get it from. It is like everybody does engineering. You can do engineering right from your local tier 2, tier 3 city college to your major city colleges or some of the major well-known universities like Vellore Institute of Technology or the Amrita Institute or many of those nationally known institutes. And the ultimate is again the IITs, Indian Institute of Technology, right? So certifying bodies are also like that. In India alone, there are more than 50 certifying agencies. There are some who will not even look at your manuals, they will straight away give you a certificate. It is like buying your degree without attending classes, right? So that definitely doesn't work. That is not useful at all. Whereas in an IIT system, it is highly rigorous, and then there's a relative grading. You cannot afford to miss even a single class and many things, that makes you to be a lot more deep rooted in your knowledge, and you are really worth the certificate which you have put. So you choose a certifying body, which according to how you can, it is like choosing which college you want to do your engineering from. Submit the quality manual for approval, implement any changes required in the manual, call the certifying body for assessment. They will come and do, usually they will take so how many, they will tell you depending upon your organization's size, how many days or how many man hours they will need for doing the audit, and then provide it. So a small organization, they can do it within, say maybe 2 of them come and do it in 1 day. It's possible, but some organization may take 2-3 days. Like I said, for our Gangaram for quality, this thing, CII Exim Quality Award, 6 of us spent 6 days in their assessment. That's huge organization, So that depends upon the size of the organization. Now, the accreditation structure is that there is an ISO council which is there in Geneva. Accreditation bodies are internationally known, and under the accreditation bodies, there are certifying bodies. It is like Reserve Bank of India and the commercial banks. These commercial banks are audited by the Reserve Bank of India. And that ISO council is like the central government, the finance minister. So just to give you an analogy, we are not bothered about a certifying accreditation bodies because they are, we don't, when you go for certification, it is a certifying bodies to whom you go. Well-known ones are the BVCI. In fact, wherever I have taken certification, I got BVCI to do it. Bureau Veritas Certification International of UK. British Standards Institute for Quality Assurance is another well-known. DNV is very well known. KPMG, which is that big four, they are well known. Lloyd's Register, more popular in the US. TUV-CRT, Germany, TUV is again a very popular accreditation. Like this, there are nearly 50 such certifying bodies, but these are one of the most popular ones, like the IITs in engineering. Benefits, external benefits, customer gets a confidence when they see that you're ISO certified organization, that you're able to give consistent products and services from there. Attract overseas business because most export organizations look for ISO certification from a recognized certifying body. Advantage in competitive environment, obviously good quality gets you better pricing and better payment terms, which is what ultimately you need in business. Internal benefits, consistent product quality, self-analysis of systems and procedures, effective employee relationship, improved atmosphere of work, reduce rejections, rework failures, implementation of continuous improvement at all levels, proactive to changes, which is very, very important. Some of the survey facts as seen, of course, there is a source given here. 83% of realized improvement of management control. Definitely, I can tell you from wherever I have myself personally implemented and have been associated with, there are enormous improvements whenever in various things you do internally and externally, and the product itself when you implement ISO 9000. Well, ultimately, what is required is to implement ISO is your attitude. If the top management and the employees in the organization do not have a positive attitude, you cannot do this because it is not compulsory. It is compulsory only because the customer requires it. It is like you want a certificate for getting a job. That doesn't mean that you'll be doing a job very well unless you have got your knowledge and training and skills correctly during the process of your attaining the knowledge. That again is only when your attitude is right and not for getting just a certification. So your positive attitude is really very, very important for you and your organization to go for ISO 9000 and maintain it. So thank you. That's the today's end of the session. So I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. And of course, I'll decide what topic and inform you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Who do I get on this?